Welcome to MindMagine's introduction to unified service management. I'm extremely grateful to have Jan de Vries with us, an expert in service management, DevOps. I can actually complete the whole list, but that would be taking an hour already. Jan is an extreme expert in many different methods and frameworks. And Jan will give us an explanation in USM and antifragility. Don't hesitate to ask any questions in the chat. And we will deal with them after the presentation. Jan, thanks a lot.
Thank you. All right. Actually, my presentation is made up of two parts. And the first part is about USM, Unified Service Management. And it is actually about the new thinking of USM and about repairing the blind eye of ITIL and actually repairing the blind eye of every practice-based framework, because they all have a blind eye. A little bit about myself. I'm based in the Netherlands. I'm an independent trainer, coach, speaker, consultant in all the areas that are mentioned here. And I'm also involved in a couple of research initiatives. For instance, maybe interesting to mention the middle one. If you introduce Agile or DevOps in your organization, you will have a lot of discussions with corporate services, like especially like control. I mean, when you are composing a team of DevOps professionals, which come from, let's say, 6 or 7 different departments, then your business controller or your financial controller will say, my spreadsheet doesn't work anymore, so I'm against this whole plan. And what we are doing in those particular research initiatives is to bring those worlds closer together, so that control, HR, compliance, procurement, all the other corporate services better understand what is coming towards them, and the other way around, that we as people who are actually changing organizations, not only Agile and DevOps, but also USM, better understand what a controller or a HR professional, etc., needs to do his or her work. Before I start with USM, I want to acknowledge the work of Jan van Bon. He's the chief architect of USM, the founder of the the Service Foundation. Jan does not like so much to travel long distance, so that's why I'm here. And maybe he's online. I don't know. I'm looking at maybe he's online. I don't know. And if so, we might hear of him during this 2 hours. To start off this presentation, I'd like to say something about complexity, because we are in a complex world which is getting more and more complex, and all the big consultancy firms already wrote a lot of reports about it. And what we actually see is that big consultancy firms actually say, to reduce complexity, we offer you an even more complex solution. That is what is actually happening all the time. So we never will escape the complexity situation anymore, as long as we are heading down the path we're following. Where is that complexity coming from? Well, first of all, from fragmentation. Of course, we are dealing with cloud, with software as a service, actually with everything as a service. So it's all fragmented. We got our commodities from all over the world. We do a lot of sourcing. Part of our team is internal, part of our team is external. So we are actually fragmenting more and more and more. And of course, after buying or building or assembling all those fragments, we still need to integrate all that. And hopefully by means of APIs, and also we have to deal with sensor technology and Internet of Things, and also organizational, like the SSCs, the Shared Service Center organizations, to integrate all those fragments again in one piece and to get all that things connected. And the third thing that is, which is actually making it quite a little bit dangerous, is that we are also very dependent on all the things that we are building and integrating, because we have become a very dependent society. Maybe you're familiar with the very famous quote from Peter Jacobs. He was the CEO of the ING Bank in the Netherlands, and many years ago he said, "We as ING Bank, we are actually an IT company with a banking license." Okay, that's something completely different than what you would think. So he said, "We as a bank, we are actually an IT company." Okay. To get into control, to get into full control of all the services that you see that you are using, you have to make sure that you first of all have to get in place a proper management. So control is first of all a matter of management, and then a matter of technology. So many people think it's the other way around. They think, well, to integrate all those technical stuff, we have to deal with a lot of technical issues. Of course, there are technical issues too, but the main part, the main challenge is, in most cases, the management part. And therefore, we need a management architecture to make sure that we connect this all together in a right way. And that brings us to the USM customer provider interaction model, which actually says, okay, we have on the left side, we have the customer. The customer has a certain demand, which he lets know to the provider. The provider has some processes, he has some people, he has some technology, and with that, he builds his or her routines, and those routines are able to generate the services that the customer needs. And the service actually consists of a facility that is supported. We'll come back to that to that later. To make this work, because this is quite simple, and USM is and remains quite simple, this requires a methodological approach, and also a service management architecture, and also a service management system. And yeah, that requires actually new thinking. And that is something that I want to introduce you in the next half hour. And it is not only for small companies, it is even for big examples like the government. Because in the end, also the government is also a service provider. In the Netherlands, where USM comes from, we see a lot of USM deployments at the government, because USM became part of the so-called Nederlandse overheidsreferentiearchitecture, the NORA, which stands for Dutch Governmental Reference Architecture. And we see a lot of municipalities, provinces, and ministries all using USM in the last few years, and it keeps actually accelerating in the coming years. So the challenge is actually how to cooperate and to make it interoperable. How do you make sure that all the service teams cooperate in a sustainable way? And what we see here actually is that all the the facilitating departments of an organization all have their own view on what they are doing for the primary business, like ICT, but also security, and also catering, and also finance. And as a whole, it is actually enterprise service management. And what you could say is that it is important to make sure that all those service teams, whatever they do, whether they do IT, whether they do HR, or what they do catering, in all cases, you would like them to work together to make sure that they provide the maximum service to the organization. It becomes even more complex, of course, because in most cases, you also have supply chains and networks where you are part of, and you also want your own organization to work properly in that supply chain. So it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort to make sure that all those different fragments work together. That is actually the challenge. So we have a complex world, and we have a lot of challenges that we already live in. And yeah, we could say for strong change, you need strong links, and those strong links are actually USM links. And then it is important to realize that that's a quote from Albert Einstein, who says, you cannot solve the problems with the same thinking you used when you created them. When you keep doing what you did, you get what you got. We all know that. And still we're doing that in IT service management. So we have to think of it in another way to make sure that we get rid of our current problems. So this requires a little bit of different thinking. The old thinking is islands with all islands with their own practices. There is a lack of integration. It doesn't really work together. And the new thinking, then we are actually thinking of ICT and of, for instance, HR as all different parts that are are actually designed to work together. A famous example is, of course, the onboarding. If you have an onboarding, you want to make sure that ICT will do something, security will do something, facility will do something, security will do something. And it would be very nice if they would do it all in the right order and also clicks together. So, for instance, that an onboarding would also take not more time than it actually should take. So, yeah, to achieve this, we need standardization. That's an important one. And then we actually come to one of the most important pictures in USM. And this is actually about what we see here. And let me click it to the next one. What we see here is that on the left side, we have methods, and methods are based on principles, and they are learnable. And on the right side, we have practices coming from frameworks. They are applicable. And what we actually want to do is, if we want to create a tall building, we first have to start with a solid foundation. And that solid foundation is actually a method. So what you could do is say, okay, when you are thinking of a lot of frameworks that you want to apply in the end in that tall building, it all begins on the left side with USM. Yeah. Yeah. So on the left side is USM. It's actually one of the very few methods which is capable of laying a solid foundation. and also a very simple foundation. And as soon as you have that, you will be able to build whatever tall building on that particular foundation. So what we in most cases do right now, we start at the right side and we start deploying a framework, and we start deploying another framework. And before we know we have to deal with 60, 80, 90 different processes. And USM actually says, okay, start first at the left side, begin with your foundation. You only have, and you only will have 5 processes, and that's it. You will never have more than 5 processes, and you can build whatever you want to do on the right side, build on that particular foundation. We'll see that in a few minutes. So we have been talking about. Let me check. Yeah. We are switching to the service. And that's also a very difficult thing when we are in IT service management country, because there is a lot of different definitions regarding service. Jan van Bon, he wrote a blog on it on LinkedIn, where he compares more than 100 horrifying definitions of service. So every framework that you come up with has its own pretty complex definition of service. And that's also something that we will see in a minute that USM takes care of, because USM also has a very simple definition of service of its own. And that's right here. The service is a supported facility. That's it. So a facility is what we see in the middle, can consist of goods and actions, and it will be supported. So you could say the overall service that is projected here is a supported facility. And yeah, that could be everything. That could be public transport. That could be things like education. That could be IT in general. So in all those cases, it's actually the same. The service is a supported facility. Okay, let's switch our focus to the right side, the service provider. And let's see how a service provider looks from the inside. And of course, we already said that it's important when you are providing services that you come into full control of what you are actually providing to your customer. And I already mentioned process, people, and technology. And what we actually see here is when you are only talking about the what, then you're talking about the process, and you're actually only talking about the activity that needs to be performed. So that's the process. It is actually only about the what. There is no who, there's no role, there's no how, there's no technology. There's only the what. If you add the who or the role, then you will get a procedure, and then you will see that not only what has to be done, what activity, but also who will be doing that. In this case, a service desk agent, for instance. And the last one, if you also add the how, then you will get a work instruction. And then, yeah, we have a complete picture where we see the activity the role of who is performing that particular activity, and how he or she should be doing that expressed in an instruction. And what we actually already see here is, let me check this one. This is actually the first time I show where the blind eye of ITIL actually is, because the process is only about the what. So it all starts with processes, but all the frameworks like ITIL, they start actually with focusing on practices. So you see, it's not only the what, but also the who and also the how. And that means if you are focusing on the practices and frameworks are filled with practices, that you've got a numerous amount of practices to deal with. And that is exactly what USM does, because USM says, okay, we have a number of design criteria, and which only the first one is already very designating what a process is in this particular situation. A process describes what must happen consecutively, not who or how. If that is the case, if you're only focusing on what, and you would, for instance, look at the ITIL version 3 process model, like this one, you would conclude that it is filled with who and how. So these are actually not processes, these are actually practices. Same for IT for IT. Also very colorful pictures, very nice to see. But in the end, when you zoom in on it, you will see that it is filled with who and how. So these are also practices. And then you would say, okay, but we have people like business process analysts, and they make swim lanes. And a business process analyst, so a process analyst, he or she should be doing something like processes. No, swim lanes are filled with who and how. So again, filled with practices. Welcome. Yeah, so what USM actually does is to determine the workflow with the USM decision tree. And what we see here is that we first have to think whether a trigger that gets in, is that reactive or proactive? And proactive means that we actually trigger it ourselves. It might be a risk trigger, so to say. We might improve based on that. If that is the case, we would go into the so-called orange process. We will see that in a minute. Or it is not proactive, it is reactive. And then my second question would be, should the agreement be updated, or is there an issue with the agreement? So can I, if you ask me something and I react to that, it's reactive. Can I do it right away for you? Or should we first make sure that our agreement is okay? And maybe we have to look at that agreement first, and then we first go into the blue process, the blue, the blue process in getting our agreement well. If the answer was no, then okay. Then my next question is there a failure, or is the caller requesting an action? And if there's a failure, that should be an incident. Then I go into the to the red process, and I will recover something for you. If that's not the case, I go into the yellow and green process, and there I have my last question. Does the action require a change to the managed infrastructure or not? If so, if yes, then it will be a change as we know it in service management. And I will also make sure that it will be recorded in the managed infrastructure. And if not, then I will go into the green process, and I can actually handle it like a service request. So that is actually a decision tree, a USM decision tree, that you will use a lot when you are applying DevOps in your organization, and especially when you are dealing with designing the tool in your organization also. So the tool that you are using should be able to accommodate this particular USM decision tree. Okay, then we get to then we get to the USM process model. And what we actually see here, and I cannot, I cannot use my, no, I will have to do it like this. When I will explain in detail all the parts of this particular process model. This is the USM process model. Actually, there is not. There's a little orange part too. So these are the 5 processes which are part of USM. This is it. It will not become more complex as what you see right now. So that's very attractive for people, for organizations, that you actually can say, okay, this is it. It will not be more complex than I see it right now. Let me explain how it works. Suppose I have an incident, and an incident comes in, and I start with the recover process. And then I can go in 2 different directions. I can say, okay, this particular incident can be very easily recovered because we only have to reset something. So I go down with the arrow to, and I trigger a service request to the operate process, towards the green process. And the green process, the operation process, will just reset a particular system or component or whatever. And after that, it will report back to recover that it has been done, and then recover can report back to the customer that the particular component or the system already works again. So that's the most simple way of recovering an incident. Maybe it's a little bit more difficult because then as I trigger an incident and I go into the recover process, and then I discovered that I have to, or I need actually a request for change to resolve the particular incident. And then I go up with the RFC arrow to the yellow process. And in the change process, I will actually design what needs to be changed. Maybe I have to buy something, or maybe I have to assemble something or whatever. And when I'm done with thinking about the changes ready to be put into production, I trigger a service request towards the green process, in which I actually will ask the operation process to implement the change. And then the green process will feed back to the yellow process that the change has been implemented. The change process will feed back to the recover process that the change has been successfully implemented. And then the recover process will feed back to the customer that the incident has been implemented. Or the incident has been, the incident has been resolved by an implemented change. On top of that, I could also, of course, introduce a very simple RFC. So maybe also the customer wants to trigger sometimes a request for change. So then the customer actually is the one who is triggering a request for change into the yellow process. And from that point on, actually all the things happen that I mentioned before, but then it was preceded by an incident. On top of that, we have a wish, and a wish actually means that we first, as a customer, want something that I'm not sure whether that is part of our current agreement. We have to, as a customer and a service provider, we first have to think of what kind of agreement do we need, do we want? Maybe the agreement is already okay, but maybe there has to be changed something. Then the customer will trigger a wish into the blue process, which means that we will first discuss what needs to be changed or maybe extended to the agreement. And if we are agree on that, then we will see another request for change arrow to the bottom, to the yellow process again, which starts the change process for the adjusted agreement process. And the last one on the left side is the service request. And the service request means that a customer could also ask very simple things like he or she has forgotten his or her password, or somebody needs more documentation or whatever. In all those cases, that particular customer could submit a service request and file it at the green process. Then we have, last but not least, on the right process, we have the improvement process, and that's actually where we have the risk triggers. And we have very simple ones where a risk, an improvement actually can be very simply being taken care of by means of a service request. So by means of the operation process, or maybe a risk needs a request for change. Then we trigger with the request for change, the change process, or maybe the improvement that we are thinking of is even more complicated because it may also be part of some agreements. So if we want to take care of this particular improvement, we also have to adjust agreements. So that is in short what the USM process model stands for. All right. And what we then see is that we have some workflows and not a whole lot of workflows, no, only 8 workflows that are actually flowing in this non-redundant process model. So, for instance, this is actually what I told before. This was actually the second example that I shared with you this morning. So the customer is actually triggering an incident. the incident is not that simple. It's not only a reset, but it needs a change. The change will start, and as soon as the change has been is ready for implementation, then there is a trigger towards the operation process. And as soon as that is triggered, then the operation process will start to work from beginning to end. And at the end, it will report back to the change process that the change has been implemented. And the change process will report back to the recover process that the change has been implemented successfully. And then at the end, the recover process will feed back to the customer that the incident has been resolved successfully. So what you actually see here is something that consists of a red, yellow, green, yellow, and red process, which is actually an incident that is resolved by means of a change. And it is always the case. Sorry. Must be the echo. You can always check whether the workflow is okay, because it always starts and ends with the same color. So this starts with red and it ends with red. So and that is because it is about an incident. And in the end, you also want to feed back to the one who is who triggered the incident to make sure that it is taken care of in the administration, also in the right way. So this is one of the 8 workflows. In total, we have 8, and they look like this. So we have the 8 workflows. We also here we have made even some more structure into it, because you can see that the third one, the red one, is actually that is actually the incident workflow. That it when you start with an incident, you have to decide whether it can be done with or without a change. And we see it the same with the risks, the proactive, the improvement workflow at the bottom. That particular risk, then you also have to decide, can we do it in a very simple green way, or maybe there's a change involved, and so it's also yellow. And maybe it's even more complex, because we also have to adjust agreements. So we also have a blue part in this. So these are the 8 USM workflows. And then we have to make sure which people are actually connected to these processes, which roles, and which technology connects to it. So what tooling is actually used to make sure that this really works. Because these workflows are all standard, we don't have to make them up ourselves. So these 8 templates for workflows are already on the internet, on the USM portal. And then you can also see that, let me finish this one. What you can see is that it all starts with an activity, and then you can fill in the who and you can fill in the how. And yeah, you can see 1 till 8. That's actually all the workflows that I just mentioned. More complex than this, it will not get. And then you might say, okay, but security management, when we're security management, then you could say, okay, well, security management is actually that's actually in the blue process, because security agreements are in the security clause of the service agreement. And it's the same actually for the yellow part. In an RFC checklist there will be an RFC checklist for security issues, and the security manager will maybe be part of the change advisory board. Okay, so I will make that part of the yellow process. And the same for security incidents. Maybe they need also special attention, and then I will make that a part of the red process, and the same actually for green, and the same for orange. So in the end, you could say that all the security management process, which is actually a practice, security management is not a process, it's a practice. You could click it to all the 5 processes of USM, and will just work with the 8 workflows. Same actually for capacity management. So, okay, where's capacity management? Exactly the same. It will also, capacity management will have blue aspects, yellow aspects, red aspects, etc. And then we come to an interesting interesting slide, and that's this one, where we can see that we can a whole lot of ITIL version 3 or ITIL version 4 processes, practices actually, can be plotted on just 5 USM processes. So it actually just looks like this. So instead of using ITIL version 3 or ITIL 4, with all the complexity that comes with it, if I start with USM, I can use parts of ITIL into my who and what, in my who and how, but the what, the processes, are actually only the 5 processes that USM mentions. So for any combination of practices, you could say this is actually all you need. You come back to those 5 processes. You could say, okay, what can we say about the people component? Because we talked about the process component, what about the people? And we don't have that much time right now, but you could say that that control is built on a separation of duties and domains. What USM actually says is that we make a split between process roles and line roles, and between specification roles and realization roles. And that separation of duties and domains actually means that we generate enough control to make sure that it works. And last one, what can we say about technology? Well, the technology, what we need from a tool is actually a workflow administration and a managed infrastructure register, and that should be able to I should be able to use that for my coordination of service delivery. So I actually need one module for 8 templates of the USM workflows, and one module for the MIR, the Managed Infrastructure Register, or as ITIL calls it, a configuration management database. And of course, it also needs a lot of connections, such tooling interfaces with a lot of other tools per task domain. And what has been displayed in the meantime in the middle is the 4 tools that are already certified for the use of within USM, and that is OTRS, Clientele, For Me, and TUSM. Those are right now the 4 tools worldwide that are certified for the use within USM. And it's quite difficult to get certified for USM, because USM has a list of more than 130 requirements, which a tool all should meet with to make sure that it is 100% certified. So what we have learned is actually that we should not invent the same wheel over and over again. We could have same goals, we could have the same definition of a service for all teams, we could have the same processes, the same 8 workflows, the same requirements for tooling and for the modules in the templates. We could have separation of duties for control, same interface with all customers and all supply chain partners. And yeah, that should make it a lot more simple than it is in most cases right now. That can be done at the scale of an ecosystem, and actually that is already also been done in many cases. That USM has not only been used on one level, but also on the level above it or the level under it. So you can build very easily large ecosystems with USM. This is I will just skip this one. Yeah, so you could say that the unified link to build endless supply chains and service ecosystems, that's actually the Lego of the manager, and we can do that with USM. So yeah, you could say that if you there it is. Yeah, every service organization is capable of managing its routines and its services with one methodical approach based on no more than 8 standard workflows. That's the promise of USM, and it becomes even better because there is also a lot of free resources for USM users who become part of the USM community. There's also a lot of free resources for USM coaches once you are certified as a USM coach. Same for a lot of resources for USM trainers. And there's also a lot of free resources for universities and business schools. So yeah, the question is, what will you use USM for? And there's a whole lot of reasons that are mentioned here. And one of the things that I would like to mention is that when you are busy with implementing a ISO or maybe with an ISO certification like ISO 27001, then USM can also support you in reaching that particular target faster than in a normal way. This was the part about USM. I think, and then look at Michiel, I think we are saving our questions for after the second part, right? Okay. Then I switch, and I will just wait for the picture to be taken. Then I switch to the second part, and that is actually about antifragility. We will see there's more connection between USM and antifragility than you might think. Becoming antifragile is more important than ever in disruptive times. Is anyone familiar with this particular beast? No, no. It's a Hydra. I will come back to that later. I will switch this one because I already mentioned those one. Before we dive into antifragility, I would like to talk with you about risks and risk management. This is from a report of PricewaterhouseCoopers, and it says reports list 5 emerging strategies for coping with unknown risks. When you read this particular quotes that are here, you will see that all the things that are mentioned are actually dealing with risks that you know of. So it's not about unknown risks, it's about known risks. And that is actually the tricky part. You could say, okay, then we're not talking about risk management. We are actually talking about risk theater. I didn't come up with that particular word myself. The term was coined by Taleb, Nicholas Taleb, and he says, instead of risk management, you better become less fragile to risks. That's in all cases better than risk management. And he says to become less fragile to risk, the best way to do that is to become antifragile. And when we are talking about antifragile, we are actually talking about things that gain from disorder. So you're not only surviving risks, you're not only surviving chaos, you're actually benefiting from it. So your organization, your systems, your anti-fragile systems, your anti-fragile organization might even like chaos, might like risk. We'll come to that back in a few minutes. So something not fragile. There's actually until 2012, we only had 2 words for something that was not fragile, and that was robust and resilient. And since 2012, we have a 3rd word because 2012 was the year that Taleb published his book Antifragile. What is the difference between these 4 words? When we talk about something fragile, it is actually deteriorating from the very beginning. So think of a particular system. The moment you started with that particular system, it is actually already deteriorating. And when it actually meets an unexpected event, it will completely break down. When we have a robust system will perform, keep its strength for a very long time until it meets that particular unexpected event, and then it will break down. A resilient system will have a dip, but it will recover from the shock, and it will get back to the level it was originally designed for. And an anti-fragile system, it is actually learning all the time. It will become stronger all the time. It will have a little dip with an unexpected event, and it will again learn from that, and it will even become stronger. Let me give you an example for each of these 4 terms. And I give you a non-IT example like this one. This is fragile, of course, but this is also fragile. Why is agile fragile? That is because we see in Scrum, we have the term potentially shippable increment, which means that it is not necessary, according to Scrum, to bring something to production. Maybe if I just build it and test it and lay it on the shelf, that's actually enough. That is actually fragile because accumulating changes outside production is accumulating risks because it has not been put to the real test. Agile alone, agile without continuous delivery, without continuous deployment, without DevOps is fragile. Next one, robust. This is also a beast, the beast from Obama. This is quite a robust example. In IT, it could be this little beast, the Linux animal, which is considered to be a very robust example in IT. We have a resilient. We have here another beast. Somebody familiar with this particular beast? It is, yeah, it's exactly. It's the phoenix. It rises from its own ashes, but it will never get better than it was, of course, because it rises from its own ashes. Resilient in IT. This is the cockpit of an Airbus 380. It's actually a flying computer. If a hydraulic system fails, there is another hydraulic system. If both hydraulic systems fail, there is an electrical backup. If a vacuum system fails, there is there's always an alternative. It actually keeps flying. That is resilience. Then we go to antifragile, and I mentioned it before. This is Hydra, and Hydra is from the Greek mythology, and it was actually antifragile before the word even existed. Because if you chop off a head of a Hydra, it immediately grows back two heads. So it becomes more dangerous and more, it becomes more dangerous when you chop off a head. And when we look in IT for anti-fragile examples, we have the chaos monkey. The chaos monkey, it was invented by Netflix, and it randomly attacks a system between 9 a.m. in the morning and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So it injects failures in the system. And the engineers, they just check whether the systems respond well to all those particular failures. And if the system does not respond well, then the engineers will adjust the system to make sure that it will respond well in the future. And the incentive for the engineers is that they will be less paged at night in weekend because all the failures that you can think of already has been introduced between 9 o'clock in the morning and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Netflix introduced a lot of extra monkeys, and in the end, they also introduced the Chaos Gorilla, and that was actually the best proof that this works because Netflix became 100% immune to the Chaos Monkey. The Chaos Monkey could not think of anything at all which would affect the systems of Netflix anymore. And that's why they designed the Chaos Gorilla. All the things that you see here are now part of the Simian Army, and the Simian Army is, you can find it on the GitHub, and you can download it there, and you can release it in your own production environment. Antifragility also comes in layers. We already learned that a single airplane is resilient, but the aircraft aviation industry as a whole is anti-fragile because it learns from every crash and mistake. Like when the Boeing 737 MAX crashed, all similar aircrafts worldwide were grounded until it was clear what caused the crash. So a single airplane is resilient, the whole aircraft aviation industry is actually anti-fragile. So you could say, to get more anti-fragile, what you could do is chaos engineer. That's right. That's one of the most simple points to start with, but it's only the tip of the iceberg. There's a little more to discover. And my question is, are you ready for some heavy math? And I guess you are. No, it's not that complex. It's actually very simple, just like USM actually. Because in his book, Taleb actually works with this kind of simple graphs. And he says, okay, well, let's talk about the variable. And the variable, you can increase it or decrease it, and it will generate pain or gain. For instance, this one. This could be the number of defects that you have to deal with. If you increase the variable, then you increase the variable, so the number of defects will increase. That will, in the end, become very painful. But it is not about this kind of graphs, because this is the linear stuff. And I would like to share with you the asymmetry, which is actually one of the key parts of antifragility. And I want to share with you 3 aspects of asymmetry. And the first one is non-linearity. And the definition in the book says anything that has more upside than downside from random events and shocks is antifragile, and the rest reverse is fragile. And to judge that is to ask whether it is accelerating towards harm or benefit. Let me give you an example. If you decrease this particular variable, it only will generate a little bit of gain. If you increase this variable, it will rush towards pain. Other way around, if I increase this variable, it will only generate a little bit of pain. But when I decrease this variable, it will rush towards gain. Okay. So, and I have to ask you this, what we see here is a variable, and when I increase it, it will rush towards pain. If I decrease it, it will also rush towards pain. Would this be something fragile or something antifragile? This is something fragile, yeah. Because whatever happens, if I increase the variable or I decrease the variable, in any case, it will rush towards pain. It will affect me negatively. So you could say the left one is actually the fragile example, and the right one is actually the anti-fragile example. But there's a tricky part. You see the blue dot. And I don't know where I am. I might be at the blue dot, or I might be at the yellow dot. So I might be here, or I might be there. And the point is, when I'm anti-fragile, I don't care, because I just can start experimenting, and every experiment I will do, it will rush towards pain. But if I experiment in the wrong direction when I'm fragile, it will rush towards pain. So when I am experimenting in an anti-fragile environment, I need less information. So just to remember this, the left one is the fragile one. That's a frown. The right one is the anti-fragile one, and that's a smile, of course. Now, let me give you some IT examples. Let's say the number of deployments per month. And suppose you don't have been deploying anything at all, because it was a back office system built 20 years ago. I never have to change it. I don't deploy at all. Number of deployments per month is 0, and I'm happy. But at a certain point in time, I have to make changes to it, and the more I have to make changes to it, the more unhappier I get, until I maybe do it once a week or maybe many times a week, because well, the whole back office system has to be updated. Then I will see that the more often I do, it will become more and more and more easy. So you could actually, what I'm describing right now is continuous deployment, which is actually anti-fragile. In this case, when I reached continuous deployment as a status, it doesn't matter anymore whether I decrease the number of deployments per week or month or whatever, or I increase it again. So I'm actually anti-fragile. The other way around, the number of tasks coordinated in a software project, suppose I don't coordinate anything at all, then I will not be that happy. And as soon as I start coordinating tasks, I will get happier and happier. But software projects always get too big. And as soon as that happens, then I will see that I will get unhappy again. So you could say software projects are fragile. That was about non-linearity. The second one is about optionality. And if you read this particular definition, an option is a contract which gives the buyer the right, but not the obligation to do something. I think that most of you think of something financial, but it could also be something completely different. Financial options are usually expensive. Non-financial options are usually cheap or free, but we don't recognize them. And a non-financial option is, for instance, that you start your own business, or that you start with something new at all. And that is an option, an option that you could take, but you are not, you don't have the obligation to do so. And one example of it is the Unicorn Club. And the Unicorn Club is the club of organizations that have reached a worth of more than $1 billion in the stock market. And you can see the more you get to the right, the busier it actually gets. These are actually all successful options. The owner of these organizations had the option of starting an organization. And of course, many of them failed, but okay, maybe it will be a success. And before you know it, you are a unicorn. The time to unicorn valuation is also getting shorter and shorter. SpaceX is in this overview. SpaceX took about 7 years to become $1 billion. And we have completely at the left side, we have Magic Leap. It took only 7 months. Got a short video of Magic Leap. This is the video that Magic Leap used to promote itself when they started their company, which means that you will see artificial reality, but you do not need a headset. You don't need goggles, and it looks like this. Up till now, they have not reached what they show in this promotional video after all those years. And they consumed about $6-7 billion. And the stock market is still believing in what they are trying to achieve, because they are working at digital light. All the things we do right now is analog light. We see each other by means of analog line, and Magic Leap thinks they will be the first worldwide to make the switch to digital light. Whoa. So that's one big, huge experiment they are doing. And we know already that experimenting in IT is important. And for the ones who read the Phoenix project, it was the third way. The third way is about continual experimentation and learning. It's an important one. When I'm experimenting, then and I'm anti-fragile, then actually every outlier is positive, is perfect. But when I'm fragile, then all my outliers will be negative. So fragile experimenting is very dangerous. Yeah, I have to get rid of the downside of that outlier. And Taleb talks about the via negativa in his book. Normally we add a lot of measures to make things work. But via negativa is actually about subtracting, removing, eliminating, deleting, to make it more simple than it actually was. And there's also a connection to USM. Jan van Bon doesn't mention it that way, but there is a very direct connection between the way USM was designed and via negativa in the book of Taleb. And one of the things we want to make sure we got rid of is the technical debt. Technical debt is what you feel the next time you want to make a change. Gene Kim was actually the one who coined that particular quote, and it's still one of my favorites, actually. This actually gives you an overview of the so-called 4-color backlog to handle technical debt. Maybe as an organization, you are in the first 3 stages, 1, 2, 3, which means that you are deploying features and you are resolving defects for your customer. But that will mean that if you only are working on that on green and red, then you will have an increasing amount of defects that will come into your IT service management system. You also have to work on blue and orange, and blue means getting rid of debt, technical debt in most cases, and also working on risks, the orange one. And maybe you are in column 4 to 7, which means that you are already investing a lot in blue and orange, but it's still not enough to make sure that the number of defects go down. And then finally, in column 8 till 11, you will see, okay, now we are investing that heavily in blue and orange. Now we finally see the number of defects decrease. And the last one, number 12, is actually the healthy balance between the 4 colors that will work actually infinitely. To make sure that you work on all colors enough, you could make them part of a Kanban. This is actually a Kanban with 3 layers, but of course you could make it available for 4 layers. So it would make changes, maintenance, production defects, and then you would make sure that you work on all the colors in the right combination. Okay, let me take you to the last aspect of asymmetry, because we were talking about optionality. The last one is transferring fragility. And the definition in the book said, if one party has the downside and another party has the upside, fragility is being transferred from one party to another. And the reverse is so-called skin in the game. This is a very old concept. King Hammurabi in Mesopotamia had 282 laws carved in stone, and Code 229 is an important one in this particular example. If a builder builds a house and the house collapses and causes the death of the owner of the house, the builder shall be put to death. Well, that is what you might call skin in the game, because in those times they suffered from a lot of houses that were not built solid enough, and from the time that this particular code was working, from that time on, you could see that houses were built a lot more solid than before. So skin in the game, what we are talking here about, is also an important one. When we talk about silos, skin in the game, where it is missing is in silos. We use it a lot in DevOps, because normally Dev has no skin in the Ops game and Ops has no skin in the Dev game, because they are in different silos. You could say in that respect that silos are fragilizers. Same for skin, where the skin in the Ops game is missing, and that's all in most cases. Sorry again. Still suffering from the echo. Yeah, skin in the Ops game is missing, and that's the case with projects where they actually compare the benefits with the initial costs, and they don't take into account the operational costs, because a project manager, project people in general, have no skin in the Ops game. So you could say projects are also fragilizers. Now, and the last one is where skin in the game is missing is command and control management. Command and control management leads in most cases to low speed, a low quality organization. And what you would like to do is to make sure that people take their own decision on their own level. And what David Marquet, who wrote the book Turn the Ship Around, actually says is push authority to the information level instead of pushing information to the authority level. So on all different levels in the organization, a lot of information is already available. So make sure that the decision taking can be lowered to that particular level, instead of first bringing the information to the level above that, and then via command and control downwards again. Of course, you have to make sure that people are technically competent, they have organizational clarity, they have to understand priorities, but then it really works. But you could say command and control is also fragilizing. All those 10 slides before about skin in the game were actually, they can boil down in this particular slide. Are we or are we not in the same team? That's an important one, of course. So we could say, to get more anti-fragile, you could say, okay, we could reduce technical debt, we could do some continuous deployment, we could decentralize decision-making, we could switch from project thinking to product thinking, and we could use DevOps. Well, there's only a few more examples to get more anti-fragile. And you could compare it a little bit to inoculation. Getting antifragile is similar to inoculation, and I think this particular baby sees a needle for the first time. Otherwise, it would not smile at the doctor, I guess. And well, what we actually see that's correct, because the biological version of antifragility is hormesis. And hormesis is about applying a small dose into a human to strengthen the system, and a large dose applying in that particular human would weaken or kill it. So hormesis is also about a very specific balance, the amount of, in this case, a vaccine that you would be introducing in a human body. If we translate that to IT, you could think of a canary release. And a canary release, maybe you're familiar with that, is actually allowing only a few users into a system. And well, when something doesn't work out in the right way, you just roll back the particular change. Nothing has happened. So a canary release, could help you to experiment in a very safe way. Same for A/B testing. Two different tests, very similar, and it helps you to determine what the next change would be, also in a very safe manner. Same for microservices. The reduction of big decisions into smaller, frequent decisions that are actually all upside. That's actually what you want to do. And if a microservice turns out to be downside, well, you can just rewrite it and make sure it is upside again. So a microservice is also a very safe way to make the changes in your organization, in your system. And the previous slides actually all reveal a deep truth about software, because they say that software development actually has diseconomies of scale. Milk is cheapest in big cartons. Software is cheapest in lots of small cartons. It's a whole other way of thinking. So software has diseconomies of scale. Just think about the implications. Another one, auto-scaling. That's actually programmed to respond to change. So this is actually a sort of automated antifragility. And then you could also say, okay, should we focus on the mean time between failure or the mean time to repair? Should we trying to achieve a longer mean time between failure, or should we trying to achieve a shorter mean time to repair? And the answer is actually that anti-fragile systems actually they assume that failure will happen. So MTTR is the right answer here. And you only have to focus on MTBF in two other cases. And that is what John Allspo, the guru in this particular area, already told us many years ago. And he said, well, only two exceptions. When you are dealing with space hardware, the moment you have launched it, it is very hard to maintain when it is 1 billion kilometers away. So you want an MTBF for space hardware, and also for embedded medical devices, you also wanted to have a long MTBF. In all other cases, in most cases, we are dealing with focus on shortening your MTTR. So that brings us actually to the remainder of this overview. Microservices is important, A/B testing, auto-scaling, focus on the MTTR, and canary releases. And then we come back once again to via negativa. We already mentioned with Via Negativa the technical debt, but there's actually one thing that is more important than technical debt, and that is organizational debt. And that is about hands-offs, about politics, about fear, about egos, about silos, actually all the things in your organization that are not helping your organization. And for instance, this is a nice overview. On the top half, you see how an organizational model could look like. In the bottom, you see how an organization or an operational model should look like. And in most cases, they do not synchronize. So actually, your organization with all the silos in that organization are not contributing to doing the work you want your organization to be done. What we actually see in progress is Conway's law, and Conway's law actually says that your organization your system will be a copy of the communication structure of your organization. So the communication structure of your organization will actually determine how your systems will look like. And Conway's law is unbreakable, but you can leverage it, because you can say, okay, if that's the case, then we could first modernize our organization, modernize our communication structure in our organization, and if after that we will be able to make better systems. And yeah, I think it's a good idea to end Taylor's era, and the 4 principles of scientific management, which actually were invented in 1911. And if you read this, you still will see a lot of things that are still present in current organizations. So we could also add on the bottom not only technical debt, but also reducing organizational debt. Which brings me to my last quote, and that is, in most organizations, the bottleneck is at the top of the bottle. That was my presentation. Are there any questions?
Jan, thank you very much. There were a few questions from the audience. One would be, if I would be interested in USM, what would you suggest we start? Or where should we start?
I think you should start in that particular area where people are asking for it. Which means...
With that you mean those areas that are most painful right now, or
most
least performing?
Yeah, and there's a sense of urgency. And what I see in most cases is that we in an organization we always start in a part of the organization, and from that point on, when we have proven actually that it works, then we can upgrade, upscale, and use and also connect them to other departments, and they want to, in most cases, also want to start with USM. But yeah, maybe where the pain is present. Yeah.
All right. So really, what you say is, don't try to do big chunks of implementation. Start nibbling off the pain areas step by step.
Yeah.
In an iterative way.
Yeah.
Small improvements.
Yeah.
And drive it to the organization. Yeah,
and also because you have to make sure that you understand the organization well enough. And yeah, every organization is different, but at the same time, every organization is exactly the same.
They have the same problems. Yeah. But every organization has a different culture, different dynamics, different management.
Yeah. So where's the difference between? No, let me put it in another way. Yeah, I think you have to make sure that there are enough people, not only on the department level, but also higher in the organization who support the change.
Yeah.
And in
Sponsorship.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. I think that is no different than any other methodology, framework, transformation.
Right.
Without sponsorship, genuine sponsorship, there is very little you can achieve.
Yeah.
There was one question. I already have implemented ITIL for my IT infrastructure. I've implemented Agile. Does USM still make sense for me?
Yeah, I would still think so, because in the end, Agile also has to be managed in a structured way. So changes have to be structured, incidents have to be structured, configuration management has to be structured, not only for Agile, also for DevOps. It's for an organization, it's very convenient in the end to have the same definitions, the same words, the same processes, and to connect that to each other.
Yeah.
Well, the example that you just mentioned, Agile, Scrum, DevOps at the development side, and ITIL at the operation side. Well, that happens a lot, of course. But I think, yeah, USM is able to connect actually the processes on both sides in a very simple way.
Yeah. You mentioned in one of your earlier slides, starting with the foundations.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what I see in organizations is they start using Agile. They start using ITIL already halfway the 2000s.
Yeah.
Later, Agile came in.
Yeah.
And you see that there is a major conflict because the infrastructure is still managed on a very traditional way. The Agile teams, and that is not just only in IT, we also see them appearing in business processes, in marketing, in sales. They embrace the dynamics, and there is a huge conflict in objectives between the traditional IT organization and the Agile teams. And what I think what can be achieved now with USM is the moment you start with a common foundation, it's a lot easier to get that alignment in place.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm just thrilled by the simplicity of USM. We talk about 5 simple processes. We talk about 8 simple work streams in which we basically can manage all service. And other than what we have seen and where our experience come from, with the multiple frameworks and methodologies that tries to create a practice for each particular issue or for each particular problem. In line with your last explanation, your last session about antifragility, would you say that complexity is the enemy of antifragility? Or let me rephrase it: does complexity create fragility?
Does complexity create fragility?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And antifragility does not really has an enemy, because it actually think of Hydra, attack it, and it becomes stronger. I think what we see in most organizations is that I think you have to use both, so you could use the USM concept, you could use the antifragile concept, but antifragile, especially in thinking in a different way about risk management, because risk management is what the number of millions of dollars we are right now investing in risk management, and what you actually see, what is happening with that millions of dollars. It's incredible what the results actually are, how simple they are, and yeah.
That investment is more turned into a liability than an asset.
Yeah.
I see the same.
Yeah.
The one thing that really fascinates me in our long journey, we have done a lot of implementations of frameworks. ITIL being one of the first one to start with here in Asia. And if it comes to organizational adoption, there is a very beautiful lesson there, because the more complex something is you want to implement, the more resistance you will get. Yeah, so in that sense, from an organizational adoption perspective, the easier it is to understand something, the easier it is to adopt.
Yeah.
And honestly, still, regardless the age we enter with AI, offering services is still the work of humans. And the more humans can adopt to a simple approach, the better the effect will be for the clients.
Especially when I have initial discussions in an organization about applying USM, I keep telling them this is the USM model, and this is actually all it is. More complex than this, it will never get.
Yeah.
And normally they think, oh yeah, we've heard that before, and ITIL and BISL and you name it. And after some months and years, it became complex on all different levels. And now I can say that will not happen. We keep it as simple as we see it right now. This is what you get.
Yeah. I think that is missing. I think the one thing that we really see is that whenever an organization deals with a problem, they patch it. With that patch, they create more complexity. Operational costs go up, and the actual quality goes down. So I'm a big fan of that simplicity. Jan, thanks a lot. It was extremely insightful. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. You have a few slides left for me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I hijack your laptop for a second? Let me go through that. Right. So can everybody see me? All right. So as MindMagine, we will be the first one launching USM in the Asian area, in Southeast Asia. We are closely aligned with the thought leaders of USM. One of the reasons why Jan de Vries is here to help us understand what we try to achieve with USM and to help us understand the direction we should go in terms of thinking and adoption. So already since the early 90s, as previously we were called Quint. As Quint, we started with creating an audience to IT service management. And right now, really, the time has come to move away from IT service management, as what we see really is happening in a lot of industries is the concept of digital transformation. The gap between business and IT is closing. And for that, a model like ITIL, IT service management, is actually not applicable in business practices and business processes. The importance, and what we just discussed with Jan, is to start focusing on a simplicity that can help us to break down the silos in an organization, focus on collaboration. And that is really one of the reasons why we really focus on the support of USM to help organizations in the age of digital transformation. So now where we focus on in that journey is, unlike all the other complex methodologies and frameworks we see in the market, there is no such thing as a whole complex certification path. Also in that sense, USM is fairly simple. We help an organization to make an inventarization, as the discussion I just had with Jan. Start understanding where we have our biggest pain points. Start understanding where we miss customer engagement, where we miss customer satisfaction, and scope from there. Yeah, and that helps both parties, us as coaches, as you as an organization, to understand what are the most painful areas, the biggest problems to improve. Yeah, from there, it is important that your people get the basic understanding of USM. For something like that, there is a USM Foundations that helps all your employees to understand what USM is about. What is this new thinking in service management? How does it apply to our organization? And in that sense, USM is quite, I said, it is unified service management. At the same, it is quite universal. It can be easily adopted to oil and gas, to hospitals, to government services, to telco services. In the foundation, we with that interaction, we let people understand what USM is about, how we can adopt that kind of thinking, and from there, either you do it yourself, or we can coach you to start, as I just discussed with Jan, with small iterative steps to scale USM throughout an organization. And my experience with this discussion is that if I look at, for example, those organizations that have applied Agile already, and they now start growing and they see an ever-evolving complexity in the organization, they want to jump on scaling Agile. There are many different methodologies for that. But my experience with these kind of concept of scaling, and I'm not saying scaling is simple, but organizations frequently adopt a higher level of complexity, which is basically counterproductive to what we want to achieve. Yeah, so small iterative steps, understand where USM works in your organization, how it can be used in your organization, and copy and paste that to other areas in your business, with the main objective to break down silos and to increase customer value and customer satisfaction. Yeah. Now, if you're interested, contact us. Yeah, we can help you with a further understanding. We can help you with workshops, and we have an offer for you. At the end of May, we have scheduled our first USM Foundations, and we make you an offer, buy one, get one free. So dragging your colleagues, dragging your friends. I think what is really important right now where we are is to get the noise out of USM. So we really want to accommodate that. I remember I was involved in ITIL at the beginning of the 90s. I was in a big telco in the Netherlands, and it took more than 10 years for ITIL to be adopted worldwide. It takes time. And in my experience with USM, we are basically in the same scenario right now. We are fairly early in the life cycle of adoption. I do expect that the adoption rate will be significantly faster with USM, and we want to ask for your help with that. So we make you the offer, and if you're interested, do contact us, sign up for a course and get a free one while joining us. Yeah. So if you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact us. We have a number of QR codes involved in this. Yeah, so you can contact us through LinkedIn. You can contact us through Telegram. You can contact us through Twitter. Yeah, and you can also reach out to us through our website. Okay, there is one more question coming in. Is there a situation where a case scenario fall in between fragile and anti-fragile?
Yeah.
I think that's a perfect question for you, Jan.
Yeah, and actually I answered that already because
the frown or the smile.
Yeah, but also robustness and resilience. That is actually in between fragile and anti-fragile. So it's actually in gradations. You could say, okay, if it is something not fragile and something is not anti-fragile, then it must be robust or it must be resilient. So that's actually an answer to that particular question. Yeah.
All right. Jan, thanks a lot for your time. Everybody, thanks a lot for your time and for joining us. Reach out if you want to know more. Contact us if you're interested in a workshop in-house to make it a little bit more specific for you. Thank you guys a lot for your attention. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.